speaking of that content, he did mention our next guest, Chris Cobo, will be there in Phoenix. Chris has built he's specialized in buying and selling and consigning everything from vintage grails to modern and ultra modern hits. He's built Kobo's cards around relationships, transparency, hobby education, and content. As Joe mentioned earlier, he is traveling the country and attending shows, and it is our pleasure to welcome in Chris Cobo from Kobo's Cards.
Chris, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we got the pleasure of being set up next to you at the NFL Draft Show, and I'd seen some of your videos before that. So when you came in, I was like, oh wow, maybe I'll get on. But terrific. we had a great time all weekend hanging out at that show, and people coming in for the draft. So a lot of deals that were made at that show. But let's start out in your early years. I know we had talked there, and I got a little bit of your backstory. But how did you get started in this hobby?
Well, I've been collecting since I was a little kid. Basically, since I was about 6 or 7 years old is when I got into it. And like a lot of people, I kind of I was into it for a period of time. Kind of, didn't. You're growing up. I'm a little kid, so you get into high school, maybe not so much. And then out of high school, I got right back into it again when LeBron was coming in, and then I've just kind of lingered around it, gone to shows. The first big show I ever went to was it was in '91. It was at the National when it used to be in Anaheim back then, and so that was like an eye opener for me, where I was just hooked when I went to something like that. And then down here in Southern California, there was a big collector's sports place called Frankensons, which still exists now in the City of Industry. And that used to be kind of the daycare for me when I was a little kid. My mom used to drop me off on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And so I would just roam around, try to trade up, try to find some finds, and with my very minimal allowance back then. So that's kind of how I got into the hobby.
Chris, I asked Dan a similar question. I'll flip the script a little bit. He travels around the country, as do you. How does your approach change to buying and selling depending on what part of the country you're at or what type of show you're attending or exhibiting?
Yeah. Some of it's come with experience. Initially, just trying things out of my comfort zone. I think for any new collector or dealer, it's important to kind of get a gauge of what you're getting into. And in some cases, the only way you're going to find that out is by trying something new out. So as a dealer, I went out to Dallas to kind of see what that show was about, because that was a big name show. I went back into going to the Nationals since 2001. I've been attending all those again. And so once I got an eye for what was kind of happening out there, and I started building those relationships up again, I started to not only work, one of the important things about going to these shows is not just the relationships that, going to the show and going to a dealer, and maybe that's not the last time you see the dealer. Maybe it's something that builds, and you end up growing your collection through various dealers. And so I just kind of roamed the rooms and built these relationships across the country. And, it's a costly endeavor initially for me to do that, especially as a dealer. So you want to make sure you're carrying the right inventory when you're going. And just kind of getting those relationships helped me a lot of what I was going to get into. Like, hey, guys, I'm headed out in 2 months. What should I be bringing? What's going to be going on at that show? So really, it's about that. It's really about just putting yourself out there and seeing what's happening in those rooms.
Yeah, and speaking of putting yourself out too, you've started to do the content, and you've been doing that for a while, and doing a lot of these videos that like we see there, and building those relationships with individuals through content, which is a little different than just a normal transaction. And we can see the different ways that you transact, but talk through that. How did you come to the idea of I'm going to make content, I'm going to make deals, I'm going to do things the right way?
Well, I think for me, it was a couple things. I have a very good friend in Talon Sports Cards that is one of the biggest content creators in the industry, right? And so I had a friend that was doing it, and he was he was kind of telling me like, look, you're a full-blown dealer. You know, I have an office here where I have a couple employees. We buy, sell collections. You know, we list a lot on eBay. So from an inventory perspective, it's a no-brainer for me to kind of promote myself a little bit and put myself out there. But you have to get past that hey, you know, that comfort zone, that being able to put yourself on camera. And I was a little afraid of like, am I not going to be natural? And I just kept telling myself, just be yourself. You know, things go well. Sometimes they don't go well. And I just felt like it was actually a pretty natural thing for me to do. And once you kind of dive into that, then you figure out, well, it's a lot of lessons to learn when you want to edit videos in a method where it's appealing to the public. So I had to dive in and really learn how to, you know, edit videos. And that's actually become quite a passion for me now because it wasn't a background that I had. So, yeah, I'm excited to do it. And we get the positive feedback, not just from myself, but you get people that are in the videos that are excited that they, you know, they got in a video and that they, you know, they showed how the deal got done and just be transparent through that process. I think a lot of good things could happen to a lot of good people just by doing that.
Chris, two parts to this question. And side note, I think I might have been standing right behind you when that deal on screen is taking place. But two parts to this question. One is, what's the most interesting thing that's walked up to your booth from a content perspective? And then what's the most gratifying personal card or piece of memorabilia that's come up to you in a show?
Oh, man. I mean, there's a lot of things that come up to my table that I necessarily can't afford, that, you know, that's extra special, right? But, you know, there was a guy that had, it was actually at one of Dan's front row card shows in Vegas. A guy came up to me with a fully signed, authentic football of the Green Bay Packers. I think it was a 1970 football team. And you could just tell the leather, you know, it had all the right names on the football. It just, and everybody stopped and everybody stared when the guy pulled it out of his bag. And you can just tell it was his prized possession. And this happens a lot. You know, it really does. You know, if you're a dealer, you're going to see it all and you're going to see what's important to people. And I think that's part of the great part that I have with being a dealer is, you know, you have to understand when you're a dealer, a person bringing you an item isn't just about us buying it and us, you know, making some profit on it and buying it at a certain price. It's also, it could be a very important item, an heirloom, you know, something that was passed down to somebody in their family. So when that guy came up, you're putting the video up right now. It was 72 there. I was just like, man, it stopped us all. You know, we admired it. We were excited about it. And that happens often, you know, something like that that's so special. And then, but the second part of your question was something that I think it was, you said something that was exciting for me.
Yeah, for you personally, what got you jazzed in the booth?
Well, I'm a Roberto Clemente PC collector, and anytime that I could find a card that has been very difficult for me to obtain, especially for my registry set, you get very excited because now I get to check one off the box. And so I had a Venezuela come up to me that I was looking for a long time. And it just so happened to come up to me. And the guy saw how excited I was. And it was a dealer that, you know, we had done some business before. I had no idea he had it. He had it for a very long time. And when he found out that was my PC, he gave me such a great deal. He just wanted me to have it. And so when those things pop up, I get very excited to put that in my collection. And even if I don't buy it, but I want to see that stuff.
Is there a piece of content that you remember vividly that when it happened, it kind of like choked you up, I guess, to say?
Well, I think it's kind of what comes from the content. For me, not necessarily the singular interaction that I have. I mean, the first viral interaction that I had from a while back were two kids that came up to me after baseball practice at the Front Row Vegas show. And I had been doing interaction content for about 3 weeks at that point. And I put this video up, and it was a very simple edited video. I wanted all of the story to be told. It's hard to do that in less than a minute and a half, you guys, but it was two kids that came up. They had just come from baseball practice. Their coach is actually Jason Giambi. And so they come up and they tell him, the first thing they say is, you know, we're looking for a Jason Giambi card. And I was like, well, I don't have one. But I'm like, okay, well, you know, I know this about them now. And for some reason, the next guy that came up, which it's not common to find a Jason Giambi card in someone's case. You know, I would say that. The guy comes up, he's a diehard Yankees fan. He happened to have one. And it was like the sequence of events of how that happened. And I just kept thinking, this card has to go to these kids. Like, it has to. It's the one thing they came here for. And so he had it. I told him the story of what just happened. He's like, where are they? I said, oh, look, there they are. And so he ended up, if he didn't do it, I was about to buy that card to do it, but he was so quick. And that's what I love about this community. He was so quick to run over there and give these kids that card. And then I could see it happening, but I couldn't capture it on video, right? Because the camera's not moving. It's just standing still. But man, those kids lit up. They were so excited. He runs back. He's so excited. He's slightly emotional about it. And so I was like, man, what can I do for this guy just for doing that good deed? So that's where I just kind of thought about it. I got him a Jeter rookie because he was a diehard Yankees fan. Who doesn't want a Jeter rookie? And I gave him that. And ever since that, we've actually been friends. So it's pretty cool how those things could happen. It
is terrific stuff, Chris. We're up against it here on the hour. We really appreciate you joining us. We'd love to have you back at some point. And meantime, people can go to Cobo's Cards at coboscardsandcollectibles.com, and of course on social media. And Chris, we appreciate you joining us tonight.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds.
Thanks.